this is the lightning round, and I got 20 minutes to get through a bunch of slides, so I'm gonna go fast. 2 topics, 5 things courses are doing to increase golfer enjoyment. There's a bunch of options. I bet everybody is doing at least 1 or more of these, but there's a few options to choose from. And then I'm gonna conclude with what the hell happened in 2018, because a lot of people had problems. And I will not disappoint. I'm gonna have some nice, good, dead grass pictures. And I know you're nervous because they could be from your course, but hopefully I haven't picked too many. So I did a survey of the green section staff, and knowing my beliefs on certain things, I think they played me a little bit here. Their suggestions to let your golfers get their money's worth was just to grind them into the ground, make it as hard as possible so they spend more time out there, and that's not the way we want to go, really. However, they did have one idea that I thought was worth mentioning to you that you should consider adoption. I'll come back to this in a minute. Bottom line is we need to make the game fun, you know, and you want your golfers maybe not dancing on your greens like nobody's watching, but having fun out there. So I think we can do it a lot of different ways. And some really solid advice from proven studies, proven work that we and other folks have done. You know, increase your tee time interval. Golfers don't want to wait. If they're playing bad, they really hate waiting. If they're playing well, they don't like waiting because it probably will impact many of their rounds. So make your par 5s unreachable on really busy days. You're going to cut down the back up. Watch how you set up the course. Reasonable green speed. You know, everybody loves to brag about how fast greens are, and you know, the average golfer thinks faster is better, but it's not, and it just slows play, puts more stress on the turf. It adds to your cost of management and maintenance. So I think the idea is just don't beat the heck out of your golfers. They'll enjoy it a lot more. Birdies are not a bad thing, except for at the US Open, and that's another topic for a different day. And by the way, the only footwear problem I saw at the Open was one of the players' wives in a practice round was wearing stilettos. She might have been asked to step away from the greens. Unquestionably, the #1 recommendation for our staff, because it's what we read, it's what we see on golf courses, is install more forward tees. That's not necessarily what I would have thought. I grew up playing on red tees, and I couldn't wait to get off them to get to the white tees, and when I got a little better and got to the blue tees, I was proud as heck. I wouldn't have wanted to go forward. Now in my 60s, I'll admit it, I'm pretty happy with going forward. So I think that's a great idea. You just want to make sure that they are cost effective. More tees can increase your expense, so it's essential to do it carefully. Here's another way to increase your cost perhaps, but I think it increases enjoyment for all calibers of golfers. A little bit wider fairways. Take your intermediate roughs. Don't make them rough, make them fairway. I won't beat the intermediate rough much anymore. It is not the solution to all our problems. It's one of those little paper cuts, and we have so many on golf courses, and it makes us hurt and maybe even bleed a little bit. So wider fairways and approaches, those help your higher handicappers and maybe make the game a bit more strategic for your low handicappers. And any feature that singles out and penalizes short hitters, higher handicappers, it's bad news. Most of our golfers fit into that category. We don't need to hurt them or slow them down. So get rid of those. Natural rough areas, wonderful idea, but oh my gosh, be careful about how you maintain them and where you put them. If you want them pristine, wispy, weed-free, they'll cost you more money. If you want them wild and gnarly and maybe too thick, and you keep them away from play so that only the worst of shots goes in there, they can save you money. In either case, I think they can be a beautiful addition, but they may save you or they may cost you depending on how you're doing it. Tree work. Now this is actually a wood-fired boiler. I know a couple of them. There's one on a course in Connecticut, Black Hall. They use it to heat their maintenance facility. Thankfully, they have not yet run out of trees, so we're looking into options for these to see if they can be converted to gas when we do run out of trees, but there seems to be no end in sight at most of the courses I visit, and you just might need a bigger chainsaw. That's a first-year USGA agronomist a few years ago getting the training process. I like the free beer, and this has played a large role in the USGA research program. For those of you that recognize these two just very, very distinguished individuals, Ali Haravandi retired from UC Davis, and Paul
That's
Reach.
the only time Ricky's ever drank.
And he drank every bit of that. Let me tell you, Paul Reiki retired, both PhDs. Paul is from Michigan State. They have dedicated countless hours over many, many years to the USGA, sitting on our research program. But let's not discriminate. Let's not give up on wine. If you're going to give out free beer, come on. For the more discriminating palates, let's go with some wine. Love special programs. I don't think golf has ever done a very good job doing enough for our juniors. 6-week junior program in the summer. So many of our facilities have opportunities. They have campouts, parent-child outings, fishing, cross-country golf for older folks. There's all kinds of things, and you don't need to necessarily make it look like Woodstock, but man, there's something amazing about seeing a parent or a grandparent with a little boy or a little girl catching a fish for the first time. There are legal implications, though, in all seriousness, and these things might not be appropriate for all facilities. Safety, liability, you need to check on all that. Here's one that goes against me. Paul and I were talking about this morning on our drive in. I like music. I don't like it on a golf course. You go to watch a lacrosse practice or a lacrosse game or football, everybody's got music jamming, but I have a hard time with this on golf courses. Yet our younger agronomists thought this was a really good thing, having a relaxed dress code and more music on the golf course. The boombox for me, it just takes me back to Rodney Dangerfield, the Caddyshack, let's dance. Better practice facilities guarantee to boost interest in activity. I would not quite put up so many accoutrements on your facility, because that's a full day of labor per week to move and relocate all those different devices out there. It looks great, but holy smokes, we could clean that up a bit. If you don't have enough space, this is a range system I've seen in Toronto. 2 courses I know have it. And they, as you can tell from the distant buildings, they're landlocked. There's no more land. They can't have a traditional range, but the way that's built with the nets going up, they can see the trajectory of almost every shot they hit. And it is a wonderful solution for an area where they have such limited space. There's just no other option. And of course, indoor facilities, whether they're teaching, workout facilities, club fitting, and being able to hit balls from a protected enclosure. This was from St. Andrews, but lots of courses are doing these, and it's an absolutely great idea. It's another way to get people to your facility at different times during the year when you may not be able to play golf, and for people other than myself, workout facilities are quite attractive. But unquestionably, the future of the game depends on junior golf programs, and a robust junior golf program to me is just essential. We haven't done a good enough job with this, I can tell you, over the years. 10 minutes, time is ticking. Okay, what the heck happened in 2008? We had some problems, and I will say they're not problems that we haven't experienced before. Many times, this is my 31st year with the USGA, and it all has to do with weather, the timing of the weather, and how it relates to your golf schedule and what you're trying to do, your infrastructure, your preparations for said weather events, and of course, a golf course superintendent's actions and the golfer actions in permitting or giving the superintendent the leeway to do what is necessary. I'm going to fast forward really quick through some of the toughest years I ever saw, because this is why I say it's happened before. 1988, record-setting drought ends with record-setting rainfall. And then we had a contaminated pesticide problem that wiped out the turf on 200 golf courses. That won't happen today because we have social media. We might have 10 or 15 golf courses impact, but not 200. And that's a darn good thing that we can thank social media for. 94, unbelievable ice. You could have skated from Georgia to Maine up the East Coast. Devastated Poa-annua and perennial ryegrass. Ice cover, the smell of death. It was just awesome. Saw the same thing a few years later that I'll hit again. 2005 and 6 were very similar years, and they really were sort of a landmark, I think, in our industry, because it convinced people that we had to get a heck of a lot more aggressive with what we're doing to protect the turf, both with trees, with doing things underground, installing drainage, modifying soils, and in some cases, just given up on our old technology, our old soil-based greens. Summer patch, anthracnose, stress. Ironically, this course, this is Round Hill. This was one of the first old courses I know of in the Met area to rebuild all their greens. Ironically, they're standing in the middle of the green that's in the process of being rebuilt, and what are they looking at? The trees that caused a great deal of their problems. They were very successful and sort of made a template that many other courses now have followed. And it was successful because they built the greens very well, managed them very well, and they did an extraordinary amount of tree work. They unfortunately did not invest in a wood-fired boiler. We can talk about that again. Courses that didn't rebuild got more aggressive with installing drain lines. Drain lines first started going in golf course in the early 90s, and they worked so well that more courses did that, combined with drilling and filling, and both things much more intensively and widespreadly implemented in the 2000s. It's impacted turf tremendously. It's why we didn't have as many problems as we would have this year. 09, you remember Beth Page, you spit on the greens and they puddled, it was a disaster. Another reason to rebuild. 1 month later, the Boys and Girls Championships at Trump National in Bedminster on new USGA greens. There we were squeegeeing fairways, pumping fairways, and the greens, because they're USGA greens and built so well, they never really puddled. We had no issues with the greens. And so that spurred more courses to think about throwing in the towel on our old technology. 14 and 15, more extreme winter injuries. So now I'm starting to repeat myself, right? It's coming, it didn't happen this year. It's gonna happen again in the Met area. It's gonna be in the next 5 or 10 years probably, based on Dave's laws of probability. It is impacted tremendously by your infrastructure, growing environments especially, and the grasses you're growing. This is a course in Toronto that lost about 98%, maybe 99% of their putting green turf. That's a plug of bent grass that was put in the green a year or two before. It survived all the brown stuff, that's the POA, and I can tell you they had the smell of death on that golf course. I drove out onto the golf course and it was powerful, we'll just say that. So I'm all the way up to 2010. We had all the nor'easters, the really cold spring. Turf was slow to heal. You heard that earlier. I think Chris talked about that. And that really impacted root growth, I believe, all year. I didn't see good roots on putting greens at really any of the courses I saw for the entire season. I think we were just set up for a weaker turf because of that unfriendly spring. Heat in July, heat and rain arrived in July, and we had epic disease pressure. Those are the amazing nor'easters. Those are the three of the 4 different events, and they're identical practically. So one of the things you have to recognize, and Frank hit on it, bent is not a perfect grass. It doesn't handle traffic as well as POA does. Been saying that for 25 years, maybe 31 years. Bent does really well in certain years, not so well in other years. This was a spring and really a summer, I would say, that it didn't perform well. So it's not a perfect grass. It has lots of advantages, but it has significant disadvantages. And your greens will perform differently from year to year based on your grass populations and all these other factors. One of the issues we had this spring, and in any time we have fluctuating roller coaster temperatures in the spring, is golfers' perception is, man, it's warm enough, let's go play golf. And man, the grass isn't going to grow until we get consistently warmer temperatures. So normal mowing practices, mowing rolling greens, cause a lot of damage to turf, and it grows out of it when it's growing. But in the spring, we've got golfers chomping at the bit. We're anxious to get our green speed smooth and up to speed and whatnot. And if you push it too hard, which we probably do every year, especially this year in the spring, the turf didn't respond well at all. And the turf that's going to suffer under those conditions is bent grass. And if you have pure bent grass or predominantly bent grass greens, you really struggle. And as Chris pointed out, if you aerated early this spring, which is oftentimes a very good time to do it, light is not good for you this spring. So top growth kicks in May, and we caught back up. Greens recovered, but then the rest of the year was just sort of lousy. And I'm going to flash through these because I'm getting down to 5 minutes. Just note the green area. That's you didn't want to be in the center of Pennsylvania in July. It's so incredibly wet. Areas in New Jersey and Long Island are wet, but it's really bad in July. And the heat was just extraordinary in July and August and on into September. August is even wetter. Long Island got crushed. Northern New Jersey consistently seemed to get crushed. But September, it remains hot, and oh my God, everybody's underwater. And I flashed through these. You couldn't really see the numbers because I needed to get through them, but this slide tells it all. From September is you're 150 to 200% over normal rainfall, and combined with extraordinary heat, that's a recipe for, that's like growing grass in a petri dish. Really good for a scientist that's trying to induce Pythium, dollar spot, round patch. Not so good for a golf course where your turf is so soft that foot traffic, mower traffic is causing injury. You're so susceptible to mechanical injury. So from July through September, 125 to 200% over normal. So if you had problems, it was related to a lot of things. Drainage was unquestionably one of them. Well-drained courses had problems. You heard Chris's comments about that. Echo Lake is always drained really, really well, and they were overwhelmed. So it's not an indictment if you had problems this year because of drainage. Even the best drained courses did. But it is a good wake-up call to focus even more on drainage, because this room is going to happen, this year is going to happen again. We're going to get this weather pattern. So, oh my gosh, love that slide. Is that awesome or what? You know, if I could have found a duck in there, that would have been better. But one of the issues we had were the dew points were so high that the water just wouldn't evaporate. Nothing would dry out. And so it gets ugly, you know, just epic disease pressure. Really, turfgrass pathologists were giddy with this weather. It was, you know, they had a hard time containing their excitement. This is when you can really see, you know, great expression of symptoms. And we cause so much of our own damage, you know, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. If it rains for 2 or 3 days, everybody knows, you park the damn mowers, unless you're having a member guest, and then maybe you push it, and you mow and you roll, and you recognize that you're gonna hurt the turf. But when it rains for month after month, you can't continually not mow. You eventually have to get out there, and we heard great stories and saw, you know, people using walk-behind mowers to mow areas of fairways, or in some cases rotary or fly mows for spine turf areas that were so saturated they could barely walk on them, yet they had to get mowed at some point. And so probably the year, I don't know that I ever saw more mechanical injury than I did this year. And this is for Frank. Honestly, I'm not so worried about, you know, the spike marks for putting quality, although I think this might disrupt ball roll a bit. I care about the damn turf. I want to maintain density, and that's not good for density, because once we thin it out like that with foot traffic, then algae comes in, and then probably moss, and God only knows what else. So what a great year. So we just, you know, got the heck beat out of us. We get to the fall, and we're all ready to recovery, and number one, it keeps raining, and then we have an early winter. So most of the courses I visit are probably behind the 8 ball in terms of turf cover. Their turf is weak, they're thin, they still haven't recovered. There's areas that need to heal in before spring. And my friend Herb Stevens, who, by the way, I should credit him with some of these weather slides. He allowed me to use them, and I'm very grateful. Our turf is coming out of the winter thin. If it goes into the winter weak, it's not going to come out any stronger. So we're going to have to have a little bit of patience this spring. Hopefully we have a normal spring, and things will bounce back pretty quickly, heal in. If you remember the slide, even though I went over it so quickly, in May we were way behind at the start of May because the spring this year was so cold, but we got caught up in terms of turf quality pretty quickly. Things healed in pretty quickly. We just never really caught up with the root growth. So with a more normal spring, I think we'll be in good shape. But this was, I would call, one of my top 10 most difficult years, yet I didn't see as many problems as I would have expected. Had you laid this year out to me, I didn't see anywhere near as many problems, and that's because of what we've done in preparation, the relative quality of turf managers, the education and experience level of turf managers. But having said this, every one of your courses will perform differently given the same weather patterns. Because of your unique infrastructure, your topography, your orientations at north, south, east, west, soil conditions, drainage. Some courses do better in wet years, some better in dry, some better in hotter years with less cloud cover, maybe because they have more bent grass and it really likes that and requires a high light input. And if we have an overcast year, that doesn't do so well, but Poa Inlet loves it. So keep in mind that just because your course didn't do as well as your course and you're just down the road, you've got all these differences. And if you installed rain gauges on opposite ends of your property, I can promise you with every rain event you'll find varying degrees of, or varying amounts of rainwater in those gauges. So that whether you got on your course, it could be different than yours and yours. So everybody's getting the exact same weather. One of the amazing things to me is I saw anaerobic soil conditions twice this year. And for any green chairman that's been on a visit with me where we discovered this, I apologize because I always say, oh my gosh, anaerobic soils, you need to smell this. And it smells like a sewer. And the poor chairman always smells it. And he kind of does a step back and I say, yeah, that's a poisonous gas. It's hydrogen sulfide. I apologize for that. But that's a saturated soil condition. So with the conditions we had this year, you would have expected that we would have had lots of this. And I saw them in some badly managed greens on two locations, I think, years of neglect. The reason we didn't have more of this is because the blood, sweat, tears, money, and golfer aggravation you've invested in modifying soils, installing drains, fixing growing environments, and all the basics. So here are the lessons. We need to spend more money on research. I hope every club digs deep and gives to Tri-State. That's so important. This is a science-based business. We're measuring things we could never measure before, and that gives us more information to make better decisions.